So welcome in this class. In the last class we were doing what are the budget receipts, and in that we were doing the revenue receipts, and in that we talked about taxes. And now we're going to do the non-tax revenue. So these are the revenue receipts. Let's take the non-tax. So what are the non-tax revenue? So these include receipts from sources other than tax. So for example, say sources, let's come to sources, like for example interest. Government receives interest on loans given by it to state governments, union territories, private enterprises and general public. Interest receipts from these loans is an important source of non-tax revenue. That is one. Two, profits and dividends. Government earns profit through public sector undertakings. It earns profit from the sale proceeds of the products of such public enterprises. Government also gets dividend from its investments in other companies. All right, so we have, again, we are talking about, once again, non-tax revenue. So we have what is known as fees and fines. So what are they? They refer to charges imposed by the government for services provided by it. Especially the government does it in public interest. Fees are paid by those who receive services, like court fees, registration fees, passport fees, tuition fees in government schools and colleges are some examples of fees. Similarly, government also gets income by way of fines. For example, fine for lawbreakers, such as crossing the red light, penalty for non-payment of a tax, etc. Then you have something known as special assessment tax. So it refers to the payment made by owners of those properties whose value has appreciated due to development activities of the government, like say construction of roads, setting up a metro station, etc. For example, if value of a property near a metro station has increased, then a part of the development expenditure is recovered from owners of such property in the form of special assessment tax. So then you have gifts and grants. Government receives financial help from within the country and abroad. This generally is received in times of natural calamities like floods, earthquakes, etc. Then you have something known as escheats. It refers to claim of the government on the property of a person who dies without leaving behind any legal heir or a will. So we talked about, say, the tax revenue and the non-tax revenue. Basically, the tax is the nature of, if you're talking about the tax revenue, it's a compulsory payment. But when you're talking about a non-tax revenue, it is not compulsory. So, and talking about tax revenue, there's no direct benefit is received in exchange for the tax paid. However, non-tax revenue, yes, it is paid in lieu of the benefit or service received. So we just talked about that. Let's do capital receipts. Okay. So what are capital receipts? So here we go. I'll just show you. So anything to do with borrowings and loans, etc. So these are the capital receipts. So so we've done revenue receipts. The other part of this budget is, talking about budget receipts. We have what is known as capital receipts. So what are they? Again, we have these two characteristics of capital receipts, which we already did, that these receipts create a liability for the government. Right? For example, loans by the government are liability. These are to be paid back. There are therefore the capital receipts of the government, of course. And second characteristics of the capital receipts is that these receipts cause reduction in assets of the government. Now, for example, money received by the government by selling its shares in a public enterprise, what happens? It causes reduction in assets of the government. They are therefore to be treated as capital receipts. So, talking about capital receipts, in short, they are those monetary receipts which either create liability for the government or cause reduction in the assets of the government. Now, what are the source of capital receipts? Let's just do that. Like, for example, say recovery of loan. The central government gives loans to the state governments, union territories, local bodies to meet their financial requirements. Now, these loans are recovered by the central government from the borrowers and they form a part of the capital receipts. These recoveries reduce financial assets of the government. Second is loans and borrowings. The government borrows funds from different sources to meet its financial requirement. These borrowings create liability for the government. The government may borrow funds from general public, Reserve Bank of India, foreign governments and other bodies. So it has to return. And the third is disinvestment in public sector enterprises. So disinvestment, so it is the opposite of investment. So it means that the funds received by the government from the sale of the part or whole of equity shares of the public enterprises to the private sector or to anybody, to others. Such receipts are called capital receipts because they cause a reduction in assets of the government. So then there is something known as debt creating and not non-debt creating receipts. So capital receipts may be debt creating or non-debt creating. How? Capital receipts which create debts for the government are called debt creating capital receipts. Net borrowing by government at home, loans received from foreign governments, borrowing from RBI are examples of debt creating capital receipts. Then capital receipts which do not create debts for the government are called non-debt creating. So what are they? Like, for example, recovery of loans, proceeds from sale of public enterprises, that is disinvestment, are example of non-debt creating capital receipts. So now in the next class, I think I will be doing the revenue receipts, the revenue budget.